The movie begins with Jim Dodge reading a newspaper. Jim sees himself as a confident person who has everything figured out. But the truth is, he often doesn't know what he's talking about. At work, he talks to dogs and boasts about making up stories and lying easily. Jim talks a lot more than he works, even annoying the dogs. People around him view him poorly, considering him someone who talks too much and is useless when it comes to doing practical tasks. Jim continues to make up stories, but this time about creating cohorts and dealing with an animal shelter from which he recently got fired from. He shared these tales with kids, claiming he's a wealthy person in the animal business with cars and workers, but it's all a lie. Jim does this because he thinks adults would laugh at him. His constant talking weirds everyone out, and he's used to receiving cold shoulders. Jobless, he visits a restaurant and talks to a waitress about the various foods he claimed to have eaten. Now searching for a job, he goes to a gas station begging for work from the owner. However, the owner had already fired Jim multiple times and doesn't even allow him to work for free. He then urges Jim to explore new opportunities in a different town. When it becomes evident to Jim that pleading with the owner won't help, he stands up to leave. It's at this moment he notices Josie, a beautiful and wealthy girl, arriving in her elegant car. Jim decides to play the role of a gentleman as Josie arrives. She takes notice of Jim and seems to appreciate the exaggerated behavior, giggling and waving from her car. Just as Jim and Josie share a moment, Jim's father, Bud Dodge, seemingly fed up with his irresponsible son, approaches and questions him about his job status. Jim quickly fibs to his father, claiming he wasn't fired and in fact resigned. His father pulls him to the truck and drives him home, certainly not the first impression he wanted to make on Josie. That night, during dinner, Jim's sister mentions that Josie has left town, having moved to New York. Jim insists she's still around, sharing that he saw her that very day and even had coffee with her. His father looks at him in surprise. Following this, Jim's father informs the family that Jim has lost his job once again and won't be able to afford the rent. The next morning, Jim's dad is really mad because Jim slept in. His dad wakes him up and takes him to a mall called Target. In the truck, Jim's dad says if he doesn't get a job at Target, he'll be sent to St. Louis to live with his uncle, who is a gardener. Jim doesn't like this and tries to make his dad feel bad by saying, "Do you want me out of your life?" Dad says he just wants Jim out of the house, not out of his life. After Jim gets dropped off at the mall, he goes in for a job interview. The person doing the interview thinks Jim is there for a different job, but Jim doesn't correct him. When the interviewer suggests a pay number, Jim says it's not what he had in mind. He says he was thinking of the number 45. Surprisingly, the interviewer agrees and Jim takes the jobs. But as they're finishing the interviewer gets a call and it turns out that the person who was supposed to get the job couldn't make it. The interviewer realizes he offered the job to the wrong person. So instead, he offers Jim a cleaning job at night for $4 an hour, and Jim agrees. Next, we see Josie's rich dad talking to two guys. When Josie walks in, her dad asks her to say hi to them, and Josie surprises her dad by giving one of the guys a quick kiss. After the meeting, Josie's dad rushes to her room and warns her not to do that again. At the same night, two guys are stealing a car. The next day, Jim surprises everyone by getting a fancy limo to take him to work. In the limo, he meets some kids he usually tells fake stories to and tells them that he is going to the airport to fly to Paris for a meeting with the vice president of Bulgaria. When Jim gets to work, he acts like he's the boss even though no one knows who he is. Josie is also at the mall, shoplifting at night when it's closed. Jim's boss, the head custodian, tells him everything he has to do from cleaning the coffee maker to making sure the whole mall is clean. Jim is surprised by all the work. After giving instructions, the boss locks everything up and leaves Jim alone in the mall at night. Jim complains that no one told him that he would be alone overnight, but the boss doesn't care. And before leaving, the boss turns off most of the lights to save electricity. Only the aisle lights stay on. After a while, Jim gets used to being alone in the mall and continues cleaning. While cleaning, he experiences difficulties in operating the cleaning equipment. Then at some point, he takes a break to eat snacks from the store until he eventually felt bored, then calls his parents to discuss Christmas plans. But they don't want to talk to him and hang up because it's past midnight. Jim then decides to explore the mall and has fun beating drums. Then he takes out a pair of skating shoes, puts them on, and glides around the mall. As he was skating, Jim sees Josie and catches him by surprise, so he accidentally falls over a pillar of mall merchandise. Meanwhile, Josie's father goes to the police station to report his missing daughter, and they begin searching for Josie. Back at the mall, Josie tells Jim that she accidentally fell asleep in the mall, and she admits that she considered shoplifting and getting arrested, but then changed her mind. Josie reveals that she's unhappy living with her father because he's not a pleasant person. Josie notices that Jim talks a lot, so she just suggests that Jim should try sales, thinking it will be better for him than his current job. Jim explains that he attempted sales before, but it did not go well. After eating, they sit together and Jim boasts about enjoying an expensive cigar after meals. Josie mentions that everyone in town calls him the town liar, which momentarily upsets Jim, but he quickly recovers and resumes talking. Josie reminds Jim that he still has a lot of cleaning to do, but Jim insists there's plenty of time until morning. Josie tells Jim that he's fortunate to have a life that he likes, but Jim disagrees, feeling unhappy as a night cleaner. They discuss their aspirations and talk about the challenges in their lives. Jim mentions Josie wanting to steal to escape her unpleasant father, while Josie believes Jim is not making the most of his freedom. Jim questions why Josie doesn't talk to her father or leave him, to which Josie draws parallels with Jim's situation with his parents. Then they both agree that the fear of living alone holds them back. So Josie suggests they should leave town and move to California. Initially, Jim disagrees, but after learning about Josie's difficult situation with her father, he changes his mind. Josie discloses having enough money in her purse to start a new life together, so they decide to run away the next morning. To celebrate their new life together, they decide to have fun while they are still in the mall. They skated around the aisles, enjoying the time they have together, and they eventually get more intimate and share a dance with their first kiss. As Jim and Josie have fun skating while waiting for sunrise, two thieves break into the mall. They were caught by surprise and accidentally knock out the two criminals. Jim and Josie ran and hid as best they could in the dressing room, but the crooks eventually woke up and started searching for them, and they eventually find them. The crooks made Jim and Josie lie down and start questioning them on what they are both doing in the mall. Jim may look like a custodian, but he appeared to be entertaining his lady friend more than doing his duties. Jim cleverly tricks the crooks into giving up their weapons, but the criminals tell them that the guns are not loaded. Jim offers a truce and gives them back their guns, then the crooks admit that the guns are in fact loaded. Josie then starts plotting ways to escape and tells Jim to play along. Josie uses her charm to seduce the crooks and slowly create a rift between them. She also manages to convince one of the crooks to take her with them. After the criminals rob the store and load the stolen merchandise into their car, Josie jumps into the driver's seat and drives off. Jim finds a shotgun and held the criminals at gunpoint, and in the morning, a police officer arrives and discovers the two tied up crooks. Josie comes back for Jim and say goodbye to the neighborhood kids, then they drive off. They are last seen in Hollywood relaxing by a pool.